Hello everybody and welcome to this video of the Simplified opening series. In this video, I would like to discuss one aspect of openings and opening variations, which is called practicality. In other words, how practical it is to play an opening when it comes to understanding, memorization, time you need to study it before you play it. Now in this video, I will tackle two of the most famous, most reliable, most popular Sicilians that Black has at his disposal. These two are obviously the Najdorf variation and the Sveshnikov variation. A little bit of history here because I started playing the Najdorf since I was a kid, somewhere in the 80s, and I have faced the Sveshnikov a lot with the white pieces. As back in those days, I had a quite strong competitor in my country who played the Sveshnikov variation, and some others also picked it up. So I could face the Sveshnikov very often, and I was playing the Najdorf myself with the black pieces. So along the years, I could basically follow the developments of both these variations. I have to say that nowadays things are very different when it comes to these two variations. And the problem has become because, this may sound a bit ironic, but the problem for the Najdorf players is that the Najdorf is actually too good. And this has led to a proliferation of all sorts of variations and tries against it. So you may intuit what I have in mind by the end of this video. But before obviously jumping to that conclusion, let me show you the actual variations players need to know and be ready against if they decide to play one variation or the other. So let's start with the move e4, c5, that's the Sicilian. And now, first let's clarify that on move 2, both Najdorf and Sveshnikov players have the same variations they need to prepare against, mostly the Alapin. Okay, there is the close Sicilian with knight c3. There are all sorts of different lines like d4, b3, whatever. So they are the same for both players, so we will not be discussing these. This is something that any Sicilian player should prepare. So let's start with knight f3, and now we get the division. So Sveshnikov players would play knight c6, Najdorf players would play d6. So now let me take you down the road of the Najdorf player first. So let's say d6. Now, d4 is the main move leading to the open Sicilian, but things are already getting complicated for the Najdorf player here because the Moscow variation actually with bishop b5 check has become almost like a main line thanks to the efforts by Magnus Carlsen. So this is the first major alternative to the open Sicilian that you must take into consideration. So that's a one big line. But there are others as well. They may not be as popular as the Moscow variation, but they are still there. For example, the move bishop c4. It really looks amateurish. And actually, this is something I recommended for white in my chessable course 1e4 Simplified. And after that, I was really pleasantly surprised to find out that Magnus Carlsen picked it up and played it on many occasions with the white pieces. White's idea is fairly simple. He wants to go d3, c3, then castle, and then at some point just go for d4 and achieve some sort of a Ruy Lopez kind of structure and plans. There is also the move c3, preparing d4. Okay, and this is move became popular in the late 90s when Peter Svidler famously used it to beat Garry Kasparov, which prompted Yuri Dohoyan's, Kasparov's coach at the time, to say something like, if we analyze moves like c3, we won't get any serious work done. But nowadays, analyzing c3 is actually getting serious work done. So that's another move that should be taken into consideration. There is also the move knight c3, which pinpoints the problems Black has with move orders when it comes to the Najdorf, because it's a waiting move, still keeping the option of going d4 with the open Sicilian. But now how does Black remain within the Najdorf territory? For example, a move like knight f6 can be met by e5, a tricky line to meet. Whereas a move like a6 Still waiting for d4. White can play h3. Okay, we go knight f6. Now e5 is not so great because b5 is controlled, so there are no bishop b5 check ideas and so forth. But now g3. Yeah, and the problem is that black ran out of Najdorf, moves. Because any move that black plays now, let's say g6 after d4 would lead to a fianchetto dragon. Yeah, knight c6 d4 would lead to a fianchetto classical. Yeah, with g3 and a6 inserted. And e6, for example, d4 would lead to a fianchetto Scheveningen. So not quite the knight. Yeah, so there you have a tricky moment, for Najdorf players if they want to stay within the Najdorf boundaries. So that's already 4 lines in addition to the main line with d4. So let's go d4, cd4. And now knight d4 would be the main move, but major line also is queen d4. This has also become quite popular. And mind you, all these lines have become popular because the main lines in the Najdorf have become so tough for white to crack or to achieve anything. I mean, I still remember in the 90s that all these lines, of course, I considered, but I never really paid too much attention to, even though I had my lines prepared. And I was always happy when they would deviate with these because I thought, this is just nothing. But modern computers have shown that in these lines, there is also quite a lot of life and fresh positions to be explored. So queen d4 is one of those moves. So that's one move extra to consider. Let's go knight d4, knight f6, and you're thinking, okay, I'm almost there because knight c3 is the most natural move defending the pawn, but not so fast. There is bishop d3, dull looking move, but still possible, intending for some c4 Marozzi style. There is also the weird move bishop c4, sacrificing the pawn with some compensation in line, and the main alternative to knight c3, which is the move f3, which again famously was played by Magnus Carlsen in the 4th game of the tiebreak of his World Championship match against Sergei Karyakin in 2016. If you know a little bit of history, you'll remember that game by that fantastic queen h6 move leading to queen sacrifice leading to mate. So these are the alternatives, and now after knight c3 a6, finally we have arrived in the Najdorf. Now, if you think you should be happy, one side, yes, you've got to your favorite opening, my favorite opening too. But upon counting now the actual theoretical and fully playable lines for white, I came to the amazing number of 18. Imagine that, 18 moves that are necessary to study here for black. I mean, I'm not talking about the main lines, like let's say bishop g5, bishop e3. Okay, these are all bishop e2. These are all main lines, traditionally considered main lines in the Najdorf. So of course you should study it, and there's a lot of theory by all means. But there are also weird moves like bishop d2. Okay, bishop d3 recently became extremely popular. Knight b3 also became popular. There's queen d3, queen f3, queen e2. Then there are pawn moves like a4, a3. f3, okay, to transpose to the English attack. g3 is the fianchetto line. h3 is very popular, Fischer's favorite move, h3. But there is also h4. There is also rook g1. So all these are in total. I didn't mention some. There are 18. Okay. So as a Najdorf player, you get these 18 moves that you need to study as your main lines in the Najdorf, but you also have all these options before that. So there you go. You want to play the Najdorf? Get ready for some heavy theoretical lifting and work. So let's go back now and let's check what the Sveshnikov player has to study. So we go knight c6. Apart from the open Sicilian with d4, it has to be said that the Rossolimo is a major alternative, and I would put it on par with the open Sicilian. It's as popular and as important as the open Sicilian with d4. So this is something that you can expect to get, I think, in even more than 50% of the games, because simply players don't want to go into some, let's say, more theoretical, sharper stuff after d4, and they just go for the Rossolimo bishop b5 and want to play a slower type of a game. So this is something that definitely needs to be studied. It's basically a main line nowadays. But in addition to that, okay, c3 would be a lap-in, okay. In addition to this, the other white doesn't really have other options, which are pretty harmless. d3, g3. I'm not even considering these. And that move is the move knight c3. So this is the second alternative to bishop b5, apart from the open Sicilian, that you should consider. And the point is, again, in trying to move water black. Now, black has two choices. If he wants to stay within the Sveshnikov boundaries, he can go knight f6. But now after bishop b5, we have a Rossolimo with knight c3 and knight f6 inserted. This gives special peculiarity to the Rossolimo. And again, it's a serious thing that needs to be studied. The alternative is to cut out all the transpositions to an open Sicilian with the move e5, and this was in fact Magnus Carlsen's choice when he was preparing the Sveshnikov for his 2018 World Championship match against Caruana. After that match, he played several very good games, very nice games in e5, the e5 move. So that's definitely something to consider. So bishop b5 and knight c3. But that's pretty much about it. Yeah. So no major alternatives to except for these two to d4. And after d4, the good point from black's aspect is that now after cd4, we have straight line towards the Sveshnikov, no deviations anymore. Unlike in the Najdorf, where white could take on d4 with a queen, here that's not possible. So knight d4, knight f6 again. Now f3, bishop d3 is not possible. The knight is hanging on d4, and f3 is obviously pretty bad with the knight already on c6 instead of a pawn on d6. Yeah. So no alternatives again. Knight c3 and e5, and we have landed in the Sveshnikov variation. So you see the amount of alternatives and additional lines that black needs to study compared to the Najdorf is much smaller. And to give you also a bit of a glimpse of within the Sveshnikov, things here are also very much more condensed when it comes to the Najdorf. So knight db5, the only reasonable move. All the others, all the other knight retreats are easily dealt with. So not very critical. Knight db5, d6. And now two main lines only. Okay, knight d5, which became popular after the said match in 2018, Caruana Carlsen. After knight e5, e5, black has a choice of knight b8 or knight e7, both perfectly fine. And the second main move, main line, bishop g5, a6, knight a3, b5, with again, well, 2 or 2.5, I would say, options for white. Traditionally, the main lines have been bishop f6 and knight d5 here. Yeah, I will give you a brief outline of those. And there is also recently the suggestion of knight ab1. I think this was first mentioned by Nikolaus Tirlis in his famous Twitter threads. And it's an interesting line to keep the game, to keep the position within kind of more, let's say, calmer waters. But like I said, the main theoretically the main lines are bishop f6, gf6, knight d5, and now black has two choices, also both perfectly fine, bishop g7 or f5. Of course, there will be theory along these lines, but you could see the things are not spread out like in the Najdorf. There is a choice of one or two lines at most. And the other one is bishop knight d5, bishop e7, take on f6, take on f6, and now again two lines, either c3, traditionally the standard move, but since the beginning of the notice, c4 is also a major option. And that's it. So basically, you see how both these popular Sicilians are different when it comes to breadth, yeah, to width, when it comes to the options that white has. In the Najdorf, the options are spread out so much that they require a lot of broad knowledge of and checking of many lines, whereas in the Sveshnikov they are very kind of condensed, more limited, and it requires basically a study of fewer lines, even though of course I will say this applies for both Sicilians. They are one of the most theoretical openings in chess, so they require a lot of deep theoretical knowledge, but the difference, as you could see, is in the width of options that white has against both. Against the Sveshnikov, that's more limited. Against the Najdorf, it's more spread out. And this is basically the the outline, yeah, of both openings. And now, okay, it's up to you. If you're thinking about picking up any of these two, take these things into consideration, whether you think you can achieve this kind of theoretical knowledge in one or the other. Or if you're a beast, you can obviously play both, and that would be ideal to my mind. But if not, if you really want to pick one, keep these things in mind, and well, best of luck with your choice. And on this note, I will conclude this analysis of the Najdorf and the Sveshnikov. And well, if you haven't done so already, make sure you smash that subscribe button. It's really important, and to know that your support is there. Obviously, if you want to explore more of my content, make sure you check my Chessable courses. You can see the link above. And also, if you're interested in reading, you can subscribe to my weekly Substack on the link above my head. So, thanks guys for watching, and keep on watching because next videos are coming up soon. Cheers.